This is better than a booster, where I recommend budget cards that cost less than a booster pack. So instead of gambling on one booster, you can get these for less than $5. Starting off, Song of the Dryads, reprinted in Commander Masters, and is now just under $4. And this card is an actual staple in my opinion. Green Commander decks really should be running this, especially mono green. It's a 3-mana enchantment that enchants a permanent and turns it into a forest, not in addition to its other types. This says enchant permanent, which means in mono green, it can get rid of anything, including creatures. It gets around indestructible, and if you use it on an opponent's commander, since their commander doesn't change zones, they actually can't put it back in the command zone. Meaning if they're in a color that struggles to get rid of enchantments like mono red, mono black, mono blue, then they might be stuck with their commander as a forest for quite a while. I've even once had a friend of mine strip mine his own commander after I turned it into a forest, and he definitely lost. That tempo shift is way too much for any deck to come back from. Next is Loyal Warhound. This is a little 2-mana ramp spell in mono white. It's kind of like your Rampant Growth. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for basic planes, put it on the battlefield tapped. I see a lot of people run Knight of the White Orchid because it's been around forever, but not as many Loyal Warhounds. And I think Loyal Warhound is about the same power level. You should really be running both. This type of catch-up ramp isn't amazing, but it is still pretty decent. If you're not going first, you're almost always going to be able to just not play your land, play this, then play your land, and get good ramp. I put it in most mono white decks. Here's another card that was reprinted in Commander Masters, Stonecoil Serpent. X for a 0/0 snake with reach, trample, and protection from multicolored. Comes into play with X counters on it. This is just the best, most efficient X cost put X counters on a creature. If you're a +1/+1 counter theme deck, then this is a really great option. Reach and trample are pretty good keywords, and protection from multicolored can make it really annoying to block, or a really good blocker. There's a ton of powerful commanders that just absolutely cannot get past Stonecoil Serpent. And this card has seen some play in non-commander formats, so it was a couple of bucks before the reprint. Back in the day, Massacre Wurm was the big bad creature of commander. It was like a $20 card. Everybody was talking about Massacre Wurm. Today, it's only like $3, which is awesome because the card is still really sweet. A 6-mana 6/5 Phyrexian Worm. ETB, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. The first ability is sweet for just wiping out a bunch of tokens. The second ability is also really nice to have in play. Creatures die all the time, and having your opponent lose 2 life each time they lose a creature is really awesome. And it weirdly stops some combos because they can't infinitely sacrifice things with Massacre Wurm in play because they'll lose the game. Disrupt Decorum is a card that is quickly rising up in my red staples list. 4 mana, goad all creatures you don't control. Phenomenal. It's like 50 cents for the Commander Masters printing, and this card is awesome. It's like removal and damage and a board wipe almost, just wrapped up into one. If 1 or 2 players has a big board, you just cast this and they have to smack it into each other, they lose a bunch of creatures, take a ton of damage. It's almost always super good for you. I love this card. It's the red damnation in my opinion, or as close as we're probably going to get to that. I'd recommend playing it in a lot of your low color red decks. Back to black, we have Pawn of Ulamog. Black 1 for 2/2 Vampire Shaman. Whenever Pawn of Ulamog or another non-token creature you control dies, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn with sacrifice, add a colorless to your mana pool. This card's most recent printing was Commander 2017, and it's like $3. For an uncommon with 3 printings, that's actually kind of high, and I expect it to go up even further. Unless it gets reprinted, of course. Because this is a crazy good Aristocrats card. So not only do you get a dude when you sacrifice something, but then that Eldrazi spawn can sacrifice itself to make mana, triggering your Blood Artist effects again. It also triggers when it dies as well, which is pretty useful. Pawn of Ulamog is really great in a lot of your aristocrats, sacrificey, loop all these little creatures decks, and you should be playing it. Here's another card that was expensive for the longest time, but Fauna Shaman, way back in Magic 2011, was like one of the big cards. It's the creature version of Survival of the Fittest, a really powerful reserve list card. Now, Survival is definitely better because it's not a creature, doesn't need to tap, but Fauna Shaman is quite powerful. 2 mana for a 2/2 elf shaman with pay green, discard a creature, search the library for a creature, put it in your hand. So just the tutoring aspect of this is really powerful. Being able to swap out any creature for any other creature is great. But then, if you combine that with any type of graveyard synergy, like you're in Reanimator or something, being able to discard your big reanimation targets to search up utility creatures is phenomenal. Any creature-focused toolbox deck or deck that just has a lot of creatures with useful ETBs or abilities will probably want this. And it's only like $1. I really can't believe how far this card has fallen in price. It was pretty pricey before. Another Commander Masters reprint in All Is Dust. 7 mana for a tribal sorcery Eldrazi. Each player sacrifices all permanents they control that are 1 or more colors. Now this is great if you picked up the new Commander Masters Eldrazi Legend, but you didn't buy the full precon and you want another board wipe for your deck. But it's also really good for other decks as well. Mono Black and Mono Red both kind of struggle with enchantments, and this is a way to get rid of all enchantments while being a board one. Deep Gnome Terramancer is white and 1 for a Gnome Wizard, 2/2 with Flash, and whenever 1 or more lands enters the battlefield under an opponent's control without being played, you may search your library for planes. If you do, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Do this only once each turn. So this is your anti-ramp or ramp punisher card. When your opponent casts their rampant growth, you can flash this in, and then when that land enters, because it wasn't played, you get to trigger Deep Gnome. And the best part is this doesn't say basic planes. This says planes, which means you can grab triomes or dual lands. And this card's under $2. It's really powerful. Flash makes this also just even better than if you just had to stick it out on the board. A really sweet card, especially for mono white decks. Genesis Wave is one of the big bad finishers in the whole format. It's super powerful. Green X for a sorcery, reveal the top X cards of your library, put any number of permanent cards with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put into the battlefield into the graveyard. So this is just your big green finisher. That's all it is, really, is you get 15 mana, you make X 12, you flip the top 12, all the lands and creatures, enchantments, artifacts, planeswalkers, just boom, boom, boom onto the battlefield, and then you steamroll your opponents. This card is crazy powerful, and the most recent printing of it is like $1. If it resolves, you pretty much win. I don't think I've ever resolved Genesis Wave for 10 or more and lost. So those were my budget picks for this month. Let me know what you think of those. Do you play any of these? Are you going to pick any of them up now? And are there any other cool budget picks you think I should have mentioned? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so very much for watching. Subscribe for more.